You have been taught that certain emotions are problems, that anger needs to be controlled, that grief needs to be moved through quickly, that fear is weakness, that shame is something to hide, that the dark, heavy, uncomfortable feelings that arrive uninvited are signs that something is wrong with you, that you are too much, too negative, too broken to simply feel what other people seem to move through so easily. What if every single one of those teachings was wrong? What if your darkest emotions are not your enemies? What if they are the most honest, most intelligent, most protective part of you, carrying information so important that your entire system refuses to let you ignore it? By the end of this video, you are going to see every difficult emotion you have ever had in a completely different light. Not as evidence of damage, as evidence of depth. Emotions are not random. They are not chemical accidents. They are not signs of weakness or instability. At their most fundamental level, emotions are a biological information system, one that evolved over millions of years specifically to help human beings navigate a complex social world. Every emotion you feel is your nervous system's attempt to communicate something important about what is happening in your environment and what you need in response to it. Fear communicates threat and the need for safety. Anger communicates violation and the need for boundary. Grief communicates loss and the need for time and support. Shame communicates a perceived threat to belonging and the need for reconnection or repair. Every single emotion, including the darkest ones, has a specific function, a specific message, and a specific need attached to it. When you suppress the emotion, you do not eliminate the information. You simply lose access to it. And the need it was pointing toward goes unmet. And the system, your nervous system, your body, your psychology, finds other ways to make sure you pay attention. If emotions are information, why were most of us taught to suppress, manage, hide, or eliminate them rather than listen to them? The answer is both simple and deeply revealing. Emotional suppression is a social technology. It was taught directly or indirectly because the emotions themselves were inconvenient to the people around you. A crying child in public is embarrassing. An angry teenager is threatening. A grieving adult makes others uncomfortable. A person in genuine distress disrupts the smooth functioning of family systems, school environments, and workplaces that are built around predictability and performance. So the message gets delivered in 1,000 different ways, from the gentlest to the most brutal, that certain feelings are not welcome here, that you should be stronger, that you should not let it affect you, that you should move on, that you should not make this harder for everyone else. And you, needing to belong, needing to be accepted, needing to function within these environments, learn to comply. You learn to push the feelings down, to manage them, to perform okayness you did not feel, and in doing so you learn to distrust the most honest part of yourself. Anger is perhaps the most misunderstood and most unfairly demonized emotion in human experience. It is treated as dangerous, as primitive, as something that civilized people control and spiritual people transcend. But anger is not a character flaw. Anger is your psyche's most powerful boundary signal. It arrives specifically when something that matters to you has been violated, when your dignity has been dismissed, when your needs have been ignored, when someone has crossed a line that should not have been crossed, when injustice has occurred that your entire moral system registers as wrong. Anger is not the problem. Anger is the alarm. The problem is when the alarm is suppressed for so long, when you have been taught so thoroughly that your anger is unacceptable, that it either implodes into depression and self-blame, or explodes in ways that are disproportionate to the situation because the pressure has been building for far too long. The question anger asks is not how do I control this feeling? The question is what has been violated here and what needs to change. Grief is the emotion our culture is perhaps least equipped to hold. We give it a timeline. We give it stages that imply a destination. We give it a socially acceptable window, a few weeks, perhaps a few months, after which we expect people to have moved on and gotten back to normal. But grief does not follow timelines, and grief is not only about death. Grief is the natural, necessary, healthy response to any significant loss, of a person, of a relationship, of a version of yourself, of a future you believed in, of a childhood you deserved and did not get. Grief that is moved through, that is felt fully, expressed honestly, held with compassion, does not destroy people. Unprocessed grief does. Grief that has nowhere to go becomes depression. Grief that is suppressed becomes numbness. Grief that is rushed becomes unresolved loss that colors every subsequent experience with an unnamed sadness that the person cannot explain because they were never given space to feel the original feeling fully. Grief is not weakness. Grief is love with nowhere to go. and it deserves exactly as much time and space as it needs. Fear, like anxiety, is a signal about perceived threat, but where anxiety often operates as a general state of heightened alert, fear is specific. It is pointing at something particular that your system has identified as dangerous. The question fear asks is not how do I become braver? The question is what specifically am I afraid of losing here, and is that thing genuinely at risk, or am I responding to a past threat in a present situation? Shame is the most socially complex emotion in human experience. It is the feeling that you are fundamentally flawed, not that you did something wrong, but that you are something wrong. And while toxic shame that has been installed by others to control or diminish you, is genuinely damaging, healthy shame serves a purpose. It signals a gap between who you are being and who you want to be. It points toward a repair that needs to happen, a standard that matters to you, a value that was violated. The question shame asks underneath all the pain is who do I actually want to be in this situation? And that question, followed honestly, leads to growth that no amount of positive thinking ever reaches. Listening to your dark emotions rather than suppressing or being overwhelmed by them is a skill, one that takes practice, and that runs directly against most of your social conditioning. The first practice is creating space before responding. When a difficult emotion arrives, anger, grief, fear, shame, instead of immediately acting on it or immediately suppressing it, you pause. You simply allow yourself to feel it without deciding yet what it means or what to do about it. Second practice is getting curious rather than judgmental. Instead of telling yourself you should not feel this way, you ask, what is this feeling pointing at? What has been violated, lost, threatened, or exposed? What does this emotion need me to pay attention to? The third practice is distinguishing between the message and the delivery. Anger that arrives as rage is still carrying a valid message underneath the intensity. Grief that arrives as collapse is still pointing toward something real that was lost. You can work with the underlying message without being controlled by the intensity of the delivery. And the fourth practice is finding safe expression, because emotions that are felt and expressed, however imperfectly, move through. Emotions that are perpetually suppressed do not go away, they go underground. Your dark emotions are not evidence that you are broken. They are evidence that you are alive, that you have a nervous system sophisticated enough to detect what matters, what has been violated, what has been lost, what needs to change. The goal was never to feel less. The goal was always to understand what you feel, to be fluent in the language your own system is speaking, to hear the message underneath the discomfort, to trust that the most uncomfortable feelings are often the ones carrying the most important information. If this video helped you see your emotions differently, subscribe right now. Every single week we go this deep into the psychology of what makes us human. Drop a comment below and tell me which emotion do you find hardest to allow yourself to feel. Just name it, because naming it is the beginning of listening to it. And next week, we are going into something that will change how you see every relationship you have ever been in. The psychology of why you give so much more than you receive, and why that imbalance is not generosity. It is a wound. You do not want to miss it. See you there.